Let's get to know the artist behind the epic melodies, songs, and beats. Celebrating the best new music from around the world. This is the A State of Trance podcast.
What's up? My name is Ruben Ron and welcome to a new A State of Trance podcast with special guest this week, Cold Blue.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm very good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Let's dive into the history of Cold Blue in just a little bit, and also have a lot of questions also by the listeners. So
nice.
We're going to try to squeeze everything into this little half hour. First things first, because you haven't been in the show in 4 years, so this is your first podcast. So we're going to dive into the history and talk about Cold Blue, because I always want to know what infected you with the dance music that you wanted to become a DJ or producer.
So I was into music from my early childhood. The house I grew up in was full of music. There was piano, percussion instruments, guitars, everything. And I always felt the need to express myself in music.
Mm-hmm.
I was a very silent boy back then. I didn't speak much, but I always expressed myself through music. I drummed on all the percussion instruments, and I think that was my way to communicate.
So you grew up with music?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned the drums very early on and felt the need to make my very own music, complete music, not just one instrument, but a complete composition of music, of instruments. And that's how I got into electronic music, because the software made it very easy to make your complete song and not just one melody or one beat, but you could compose and produce a whole song. And that's how I got into it. And somehow trance music was the kind of genre that spoke to me most, because of the emotions and the journey that it takes you on.
Do you still remember opening your DAW for the very first time and just starting to scribbling things in, or?
Kind of. It was a program similar to Dance EJ, if you're familiar with it, maybe. So very techno DJ, very simple, just putting together melodies and beats that were pre-produced back then. But it was very exciting, yeah.
Just because you were creating something by yourself.
The feeling of power that you're God now and you can create something.
And then you started making music with something called Techno EJ, I guess. At a certain point, you started to take your knowledge of music into something more serious, I guess.
Exactly, yeah.
How did that go?
That was a very long process. I think I was always very confident about my music, even if it was complete shit. It's still today, I'm always confident about the music that I do. And then half a year later, I realized, it wasn't that good. And I have to go at it again and rework it. So the progression from amateur to professional was was a smooth flow, and I was always overconfident, I think.
Yeah.
But my music knowledge went into it from the beginning, because I learned drums for 10, 15 years before I really started to produce music. So everything about beats and rhythms I already knew, but I had to learn the harmonic theory, how to write melodies. And that took quite some time until the melodies were professional or didn't have any rough notes in it that you don't enjoy if you not created it by yourself.
Until there was like a point that was pleasant to your ears.
Yeah.
Because the first release, correct me if I'm wrong, must have been 2005.
Right, yeah.
That was it? And that was the moment you were like, okay, now I'm good enough to release something. Well, you said you were confident, so you probably had it before already.
Yeah, that was already 5 years in of producing.
Okay. So you started making music in the previous millennium, basically.
Yeah.
And then it took you about 5 years to get to a level that you would release something under Cold Blue.
Yeah.
Now, a question that I'm wondering for a while already, where does the name Cold Blue come from?
I think it comes from the emotions of these words. I just looked for something that feels like the music that I'm producing. And the color blue is very emotional for me. Maybe it's also connected to melancholy as an emotion. And cold is also something that people say about me sometimes, that I come across as a cold person in the beginning, because I don't have too many facial expressions and I don't show my emotions in the first connection with people. But inside, I have all the emotions like everybody does. But I think that was why the name was suggested to me also.
It was suggested? Who suggested it to you?
A girlfriend back then.
Okay.
In my I think I was 19. So she suggested it, and it immediately resonated to me. But the emotion of the words resonated to me.
Cold blue.
Cold blue. Not the idea that I'm a cold person and I have blue eyes or whatever.
Yeah.
However she came up with it.
And it stuck around.
It stuck around, yeah. And I still like it. And I still think it's a proper description of my music.
I think, to be honest, because we spoke about this before as well, when you released your album Winter, of course, which took 20 years to produce then, I guess. That was your first album.
Right.
Is it something that you overthink too much, making music, or is it something that just...
No, I don't overthink it, but I have very high expectations to my own music before I release it.
Yeah.
So I'm fine to play work in progress songs on shows and see how the reactions are. But the point when I release it and when I put a name on it can take 2 or 3 years during the work in progress time.
Yeah.
And for an album, it's even more important for me that the whole story makes sense and that it's not just a compilation of songs.
Yeah. And you've been in this industry then for 20 years already, almost.
Wow.
What do you think? What do you think is the biggest difference from the time that you were coming up as a producer and how things are going right now?
That's a good question. I feel at least one big difference is that I probably don't take it as serious anymore. That I don't feel I have to make it. I have to make a big career. That I have to prove anybody that I can make music. I think I'm really at the point where I just enjoy creating music, and there's no purpose of doing anything else in order to prove anything. Just making music that resonates to me and that comes from a place that is true, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. I think that's a really good thing, a way to approach things. Do you think that's something that comes by age, or is it something that that has always been like that for you?
I would say one of the main goals in my life is to be a happy person. I try to reach happiness and be happy in life every day. And music was one of the ways that I tried to become happy, by creating music and by playing it to people and by pursuing the career of music. And every day or every so often I try to see, does it work or does it not work? Does it actually make me happy or does it not make me happy? And for example, when I toured the world for 3 years, every weekend on a different continent, I wasn't a happy person.
No.
And that helps me to make a new decision and to realize, okay, if that doesn't make me happy, I have to change something.
But that's a hard decision because in general, especially in the industry that we are, let's say 90% almost of your income comes out of these performances.
Right, yeah.
So you chose to go on a path, not necessarily on income, but more based on happiness.
Right, because if you're not happy, why? What do you do with your income anyway?
I guess a lot of people are afraid to take these kinds of decisions.
Right, yeah, that makes sense. I always tried to not be dependent on touring from the very beginning.
Yeah.
I had a life set up that I didn't need the shows to make a living. So that was easy for me to say no to more shows from the financial aspect. But the other aspect is that there are a lot of fans that enjoy your music, and also that it feels like the sense is lost if you don't play the music to people.
Yeah.
That was in the beginning of COVID. It was a big problem for any artist, I think, that this connection was lost.
You couldn't share the music face to face with the people that normally listen to it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it felt pointless to make music even.
Very true. Yeah.
And it took some time for me to to find the inner need, the creative source inside of me, and then become productive again.
So in 2020, you made a big change for yourself. That's probably how you made the change into becoming more happy with your music again.
Yeah.
So tell us.
The big change is one of the biggest changes was that I moved out of my city apartment and found a new place somewhere in the countryside, not too far away from where I lived before, but it has everything that I looked for. It has a garden. It has the setup to get productive with your hands, to do some handcraft things, to start building houses, rooms.
So you were stuck inside of your bubble apartments, basically, just working, making music, and then you made the decision, like, hey, I want to, get outside and just do some other stuff.
Yeah, and it was at the moment during COVID where I realized we all try to we wait for other people to change our lives. For example, we wait for politicians to make wise decisions for the whole rules during COVID, or we wait for some companies to come up with a good vaccination, or whatever people were waiting for until their own life gets better again. But I realized for me at least, it didn't work like that. As long as I don't make all the changes that make my life better, why should I wait for someone else until they make a big change so my life gets 10% better or 20% if there are so many changes that I can do already now?
I love that. That's really smart, to be honest.
It took a long time to realize it, but I think I was waiting my whole life for that conclusion, for that idea.
At what point did you have that epiphany? Was it something that just came up like this, or was it something that grew over a little bit?
I was at a protest, actually, where I hoped that my voice counts when I'm down on the street. And after that protest, there was another protest by other people with a different opinion. And they were also trying to achieve their goals by letting their voice speak. But obviously, we all just protested. We didn't take action by ourselves. We just
hey guys, we want this change. We want this change, but
you change it for us. We want our lives back, or whatever. And that was so obvious on that day to me that the way, the strategy that they chose, the guys from the protest after me, that this is wrong. And then I realized, oh wait, I was the same guy 2 hours ago. And what do I expect?
Yeah, exactly. So what you're saying, that if you're listening to this right now, you should take more decisions yourself rather than to wait around for other people to take decisions for you.
Definitely. If you have the choice to change something, if you have the potential and you don't choose it, you don't fulfill it, then why would you spend energy in trying to make someone else change something if you can do it by yourself, which mostly always is quicker and easier rather than change your partner or change your parents or change your boss. If you can change yourself, that's always the shortest way, I feel.
Yeah, that's very true. That's a wise words. Wise words, but it's very true. I think, I think that's a good point. Is that also the reason? Because that's the reason why you were here in the studio at first. Is that you started your own record label, so you would have every choice in your own hands.
Kind of, also, yeah. But always, also, it's the idea to have everything under one roof. I get lost a little bit by what I want to say, but maybe you're right.
You were looking for a certain freedom to do whatever you want to do and the speed that you have yourself into putting stuff out.
Yeah, it was quite difficult before to follow the schedules of the record labels, and also that when I'm very confident about a track, then I send it to label XYZ and they tell me, oh no, we don't like it. Do something that sounds like this that you did 3 years ago. And you're
like, I'm not the same person.
Yeah, that for one. And the track 3 years ago was something completely new where I didn't try to make something that sounded like something else 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So I actually need a record label that just trusts my creativity, and that gives me the freedom. And yeah, then we come back to what you just said and thought. Probably it's that this is the same principle.
Yeah,
that I change what I want to have changed in my life.
Yeah.
So the record label could be something that I can do myself, and I don't wait for some other record label to be the dream record label that I think of.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So while you moved away from the city, you came into that realization, sort of, and then also your output is just insane. Like the amount of music that you're making right now and putting out is like on a whole new level. How did you manage to achieve that?
I think it's just natural. It's the biggest reason is probably that I have more input. If we think about the connection between input and output, I make way more experiences in my life now.
Because you're outside of your apartment, you're doing your gardening, you interact with nature, you do more things, I guess, with your hands. So you have more input that way.
Exactly. Yeah, I experience how it feels to be productive on a physical level in the garden, to plant my own tree, to make a raised bed or whatever you do in the garden, or connect with other people in the countryside and start some projects that you work on together. And it feels so purposeful and so productive. And those emotions that I feel during this want to go into the music that I make.
Yeah.
And this is why way more music wants to go out of me these days than 5 years ago.
Because you have more inspiration by, how do you say it, experiencing more things in life, basically.
Yeah, different things.
Different things.
A bigger variety of things, right.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So I think a suggestion would be to up-and-coming producers. Sometimes it's just to step away from things. Go outside, go with friends, go into the nature, take long walks, do whatever, just to create that input so you can create more output.
Exactly, yeah. Especially if you don't feel happy, if you don't feel that your life is the way it should be when you're sitting in front of your computer 24/7.
Yeah.
If you feel there's missing something, then just change something.
Yeah, and in the end, you're in control. You're in control of everything that you do yourself.
Yeah.
So then we come back to the thing that you said earlier. It rarely resonates, to be honest, is that you're in control. So you decide what you're doing, and you decide what energy you get into the studio, on what aren't you getting. I love that. That's nice.
Exactly. Yeah, and also, for example, I made the experience recently what it helps to meditate every morning for maybe 30 minutes, or do some practice, whatever it is that connects you with your inner energy and maybe with your surrounding energy, with the nature that you're living in. That makes such a big change in your daily life that you're a different person. And then you're also a different person in the studio, and you create different music, and the music becomes more authentic and more true. And it sounds maybe like it comes from a bigger source.
Yeah.
And not just something that comes out of a head from someone that tries to make music.
Yeah. So now you can change your name from Cold Blue to Calm Blue.
To Calm Blue?
Yeah, Calm Blue. Like very calm. You're meditating, so you're calm. Yeah, we could do that. maybe it's an alter ego that you can start.
For ambient music then.
Yeah, for ambient music. Because you do that as well, of course.
Yeah, every now and then, yeah.
Well, let's step away from this for 1 second. Because one thing I want to address also is that the music that you make, that's why it's so surprising to me that you have so much output. Your music is like complicated. There's a lot of layers. There's a lot of things happening. There's always a storytelling going on in your music. Is that something first of all, where do you find the inspiration? And secondly, how much time does it take for you to create all these atmospheres that are going on everywhere?
I think it's even more the question for me, how do I make the decision what goes into the track and what not? Because it's very natural for me to collect many, many ideas for every track. So there might be 10 different melodies in the beginning, and I have to choose which one ends up being in the track and which one not. So my work process is more collecting material, collecting puzzle pieces that I in the end try to make fit. Yeah. So it's even more, there would be even more layers than you probably would think. And the biggest challenge is to decide which one to delete and which not.
And how do you create them in general? Like, because there's so much, like I said, there's so much things are happening always in your tracks, like these cool atmospheres and things.
You mean from a technical?
Yeah, from a technical side. Yeah.
So a lot of it is just synth and MIDI notes, but then I also bounce down loops of the synth and reverse them and put delay and reverb on it. It could come from anywhere. It could be a percussion loop that I make into a melody somehow. I don't know how, but just by pitching it up and down and slicing it and playing around.
And how do you know now? Because in the past you were working with A&Rs and I guess fellow artists that would judge a certain track, like you were just saying. But now you are your own label boss. How do you decide that a track is done or that it's release worthy?
I would say it's if you get excited about your own music, then you know. And if you don't, then you also know. But sometimes it's very difficult to accept that you're not excited about it. And then your head tells you, oh, but it's good enough. And it's actually quite cool what I made there. But you don't really feel it.
Yeah.
And that's probably just the switch in your system that you have to find. And then you can feel, does the music excite you? Does it make you...
Then it's releasable.
Yeah.
Okay, so it has to be exciting. Well, I mean, that's a good how do you say, threshold? That
it's
it has
very
to be something
simple.
that's exciting. Yeah.
It's super simple, actually. But
so if you're excited to play it out in the show, that would be like, that's when you know that it's good enough to release.
Yeah, and very often I put it on my USB stick and then I don't dare to play it.
Oh yeah, I know that feeling, yeah.
Yeah.
But then you play it once and then you realize, hey, it's actually good. Sometimes it's scary.
Sometimes, yeah.
To be honest. I have a couple of questions, well, actually a lot of questions, so we'll have to jump through these. Brilski wants to know, can you describe your new label, of course, Cold Blue Records, in a few sentences? Or a few words.
Yeah, it's probably whatever I decide that I want to release can go on that label. And
whatever I decide to.
Also, I try to make it a little bit of a story so that if you play the releases in order, that it makes sense somehow, that the emotional journey has some storytelling. I think that's also what I try.
Storytelling. I like that. And also, this is not a question because this is something that I saw because I focused on this a lot myself also on my record label, the artwork.
Oh yeah.
Like the artwork is like you probably have the same feeling of nostalgia with old vinyls.
Yeah.
So like a piece of art that goes along with your piece of music, I guess. Yeah. And I have to say a big shout out. I wrote it down. Viola and Dominic.
Yeah.
Making the artwork, at least for the last one. I have to say it's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm so glad that I found her, and it was quite of a coincidence because I was looking for months for the right artist. And then a friend of mine released a piece of music with her artwork on it. And it's international relationship guy, musical relationship. And the coincidence was that the artist, Viola, she lives just 1 hour away from me in Germany, while he was living in Turkey, releasing on a label that's somewhere else. And he found her online somehow. And I didn't know of her before. And it was the perfect fit for what I had in mind for the record label. And like you said, the graphical artwork it's such a nice addition to music.
It gives an identity to a tune, in my opinion.
Yeah. And it's a new way to express emotions that are inside of the track, but also for your eyes visible there.
Yeah. And I think that's a fantastic. Like I said, that's something that I always try to do with my music as well, just to give like a visual, how do you say it, the visual side of things. Because in the past you had the vinyls, you know exactly. You were flicking through the vinyls, you knew exactly which color had which release, and then I guess in the past few years everything was just stock. Like it was just
exactly.
Here's another release. Here's another. Now you give like an extra identity.
And I just had the word in my head that it's a statement.
Yeah.
And then I realized your record label is called Statement Recordings.
Ding ding
Ding ding.
All right.
Yeah, and we have we have the possibility to make a statement by artwork as well, and not just only music. So why wouldn't we use it?
Yeah,
and let it speak.
Because in the end, you're watching most of the music. You're watching it, or you have it on Spotify, and you would see the artwork all the time when you're playing it, or you would see it on YouTube, and you would see the artwork. So most of the times, actually, people will see what's going on as well.
Yeah, and they can either look at the stock photo or at someone at something that was beautiful. Created by heart. Yeah.
I think so. Viola, please keep up the good work as well. Tobinho wants to know, what's your all-time favorite trance song?
Oh, from the very early days, it would be the Ferry Corsten remix of Adagio for Strings.
Okay.
And from the newer era would be Numb the Pain by Will Atkinson.
Okay. Tell us why. Why did you choose that one?
The new one, I don't know. It's just the perfect energy flow, the perfect melody. So creative, so fresh and original. It just stands out from everything else.
I think everything that Will Atkinson does right now is just brilliant. Yeah. There's so much detail into
He's
everything.
Incredible, yeah.
And you know, I think that the last one that we played on the show was Washing Machine. And you can see it, you can actually see it on the episode. If we are just standing here, just waiting to what's coming next. You always know there's something something cool is coming up.
Like a Tarantino movie. You don't know what happens next.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exact. So Will Atkinson, from now on, you're the Quentin Tarantino of music. So yeah, put that one in your pocket. Fernando BV12 wants to know, what other genre of music do you listen to a lot?
A lot of electric guitars.
Okay.
Which Ruben doesn't like.
No, because we were having lunch just a little bit earlier, and I was saying like, I don't like everything, but in general, electric guitar, I just don't like the sound of it.
Not your kind of thing.
Well, there's of course there's exceptions like November Rain, for example, or Buddy Holly by Weezer that has a nice little riff in it. But in general, it just doesn't speak to me at all. It's so aggressive.
Interesting. Yeah, for me, it's definitely rock music, which has a different, a similar kind of energy than trance music in some ways. Like the big trance riffs are for me a similar energy, like big rock guitar.
Did you grow up with rock music?
Yeah.
That's probably why I didn't grow up with rock music at all. It was more, I grew up with ABBA and things like that. So it was more melodic. Cheesy things.
Yeah, pop music. Yeah.
Pop music, yeah. Pilar018 wants to know, what are the pros and cons of creating songs for release on an album versus releasing them as singles? Good question.
Really good question. I think you shouldn't think that way even. You should just, or I try to just create music and don't think of the purpose for the music while I create it. And then in the end, I decide in what kind of story does it fit. Would it be a good piece of a story on an album, or is it a good standalone single by itself? But in the end, I think every track should be worth it to be released as a single.
Yeah.
And if not, then you should improve it until it resonates.
Very
with
true.
you.
I think it's an interesting one because I've heard this sentence a lot. Yeah, it's not a single, but it's a good album track.
Good album track,
like,
yeah. It's just content.
What? Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Is it a filler, or is it something that is something so far out of your comfort zone that you're too afraid to put it out as a single, something like that? Right. Interesting one. So
and then it's again just a decision by one A&R.
Yeah.
And it's not
your creative decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you sat in the studio and there was a reason why you created that track.
Yeah. For example, there's a story of Queen Bohemian Rhapsody that wasn't meant to be a single by the A&Rs, but Queen insisted on that, and then it became their biggest hit. So,
yeah, and it's still, at least in the Netherlands, it's always #1 in all the charts of like the best tracks ever created or something like that.
Exactly, yeah.
Interesting. That's also a track that goes everywhere. It's like a Quentin Tarantino movie as well. Reggie Vian, so Reggie CTS Vian wants to know, any other producer or DJ that you would love to collab with?
Oh,
yes.
I'm very I'm a guy that wants to create music by himself. I have my very distinct vision of how music should be. So,
but you did some big collabs in the past.
Yeah, I did, and I'm always open for it. But somehow, for example, we could think of Will Atkinson because he's so creative and interesting and surprising with his music. So it would be great to see where it would lead. But at the same time, it could go complete chaos, and then we are just disappointed in the end because you think you multiply the talents and then it becomes exponential, amazing music. But that's probably not the case. Yeah,
it could be a good try, to be honest. Darlon Justin wants to know, when will Tobias return to Southern California?
Ooh, that's a very
because you said on air as well that you are cherry picking the shows that you're doing right now. You rather focus on being happy and creating music rather than touring all the time.
Yeah. So that's why at the moment I just can't tell.
Yeah.
I decided to reduce touring just because it didn't felt like it's healthy enough for me. It took away a lot of my energy. I enjoyed it definitely, and I don't want to be disgrateful by anything, but it needs to be in the right balance. And at the moment, my balance is like 95% at home and maybe 5% traveling.
I think a lot of people underestimate how heavy and how do you say it, how alone you can be on tour as well. That you just by yourself, just locked up in your hotel room, or you can go outside, but you're just by yourself most of the time. Sometimes you're lucky enough to have some friends with you.
Exactly, yeah.
That you can do stuff together, but in general, you're just by yourself.
Right.
So I understand that it's not really the thing that you pursue necessarily.
Yeah, and it's if you can make it a really nice tour, and if the travel route makes sense, we talked about it earlier too, then it's worth it. But
like what you did earlier this year in Asia. You did
Asia, yeah.
Vietnam, Thailand, Taiwan.
I enjoyed it so much. It was perfect. And I'm happy to do it again and again, for sure. But it needs to be right.
Yeah.
It needs to be properly planned and not too crazy for the body from the different time zones and all that.
Ellie Wheels wants to know, this is probably someone that you know, how many melodies from 99 made it into a full track?
Oh, good.
Tell us about it.
Good question. So I came up with the concept of 99 melodies during the pandemic because I, like I said, didn't really feel the purpose to release music.
So we were trying to find a gimmick just to create something.
Yeah. And I tried to combine short pieces of music with beautiful looking videos that I cutted, and then I uploaded those videos online, and the name of the series was 99 Melodies, and it only made it until episode 20, I think, and then I gave up on it until now. Maybe I will pick it up again at some point.
It's a lot of work.
The goal was to make 99, actually. The music was almost done, but not the videos. And out of the first 20, maybe 7 or 8 are turned into full tracks, and more are coming too.
Those are going to be released on Cold Blue Records. Okay.
Yep.
So there's more stuff coming, Ellie Wheels, so don't worry about it. The last one I want to ask you, Carty, what are your favorite top 3 tracks that you made yourself?
Oh,
or that's too hard to pick in general because you can't pick your own babies. I would say, which tracks have been the most influential in your own career?
Okay, that's easier. Probably Rush on Carnage. That was in 2018. I would say Colors from the album Winter is one of the tracks that people feel the most, or that get mentioned a lot, and that I also feel like it's so intense that somehow everything came together right on that track. Number 3, let's say 11 Days from Back in the Days. It's
one of my favorites.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
That was also a track that went very nicely in the production process, and everything came together easily. And And it was probably my first really popular track as Cold Blue.
And it was a guy in Sweden that made a fantastic remix, Sebastian Brandt.
Sebastian Brandt, yeah.
He
took it on the next level.
Yeah. That's one of the guys that I really miss in trance music right now.
Yeah.
The stuff that he created, the first A State of Trance anthem ever, the 450.
Oh.
Yeah. And of course, C'est le Vibra, Under Sun. That was all magical music. So Sebastian Brandt, you're probably not listening to this, but if you are, please make some music again.
Come back.
Please, yeah. Well, that's all the questions I have for you. Thank you so much for answering everything.
Thank you.
Very much looking forward to all the releases that you're going to put out. Every 4 weeks, you probably can hear a new one on A State of Trance.
Thanks so much for all the support.
Yeah.
And also thanks to the people who sent the questions.
Yeah.
Really nice of you.
Thank you for those. All right. Next time, make sure to check out the new podcast. I don't know exactly who's going to be here in the studio. I think it's Adam Allen. So if you have any questions for him, drop them down here in the comments section. And thank you once again, Cold Blue, for answering all the questions.
Thank you, Ruben.
Bye-bye.
See you soon.
Thank you for tuning in. Check all previous episodes on YouTube or your favorite podcast portal.